Hello, and welcome to Literary Essays versus Research Essays, the fight of the century. No, actually, it's more of a compare and contrast. You've already learned how to write a research essay. Now I want to talk about how to write a literary essay, and how these things are different and how they are the same. So let's begin at the beginning and talk about introductions. So when you learn to write a research essay, you learn to put three things in your introduction: an intro to the topic, a thesis, and a summary of main points. Writing a literary essay, which is also a type of formal essay, is almost exactly the same. The difference is that the introduction should be to the book, okay? And not only should the introduction be to, but the title and author of the book should be in your first sentence, if you can manage it. So let's look at an example. So for today's slideshow, we're actually using as an example a paper written by my teenage daughter. And one of the reasons I'm using it is because her paragraphs can fit on a slide. And another reason is because she's writing kind of a shorter, simpler version of what you're doing. It's very easy to point out the pieces and point them out. So let's look at hers. So she's writing about a teen book called One of Us is Lying. So she starts with an introduction to the book. In One of Us is Lying, so this is what's here in blue here, by Karen McManus. She's got the title and the author right there. 4 high schoolers' lives are turned upside down when they land a spot in an after-school detention and end up prime suspects in the murder of their classmate. During the investigation, these students are forced to sacrifice their friends' deepest secrets and reputations and reveal their innermost selves. So she's summed up the book pretty well in 2 sentences. I expect more sentences from you. I expect your introduction to the book to be at least twice this long, okay? I think there's more to say about Ragtime, and I think you have more thoughts to share. Next we get to her thesis, and it is 1 sentence, and it is a wonderful abstract thesis. During their journey, the characters overcome their reluctance to face their difficult truths and demonstrate how shame can influence people to hide important parts of themselves and lose touch with their identity. So here's another reason why this makes a good example. Even though she's in middle school, it's a pretty abstract topic. And yours are going to be abstract topics. She's saying shame makes people lose touch with their true identities. It's a thesis. Okay? And then she needs to mention the main points. Bronwyn learns to set aside her expectations of perfection. Cooper discovers life outside of the closet. And Addie breaks free from a toxic relationship. We know what her 3 main points are. They're going to be 3 particular characters and how they demonstrate this thesis. Okay? And yes, actually, your mention of main points can be this short. It's fine to mention them this briefly. You don't want to give everything away, right? But the idea is when I read your introduction, I should be able to find the thesis, and I should be able to see at least 3 things, you might have more, that you're going to talk about. Okay, let's switch to body paragraphs. Body paragraphs are organized the same way, but the content is different. So they're organized still with a topic sentence. And what does a topic sentence have to do? States the point the paragraph will prove. Focus the paragraph on one topic. It's chock full of evidence, which comes packaged with context, evidence, and analysis. And we're going to talk about that a lot more soon. And it ends with a closing sentence. At least it wraps up the main point of the paragraph. But if you can, the next more sophisticated step is a transition. Either you want to transition up and connect to the thesis, okay? Or you want to transition down and connect to the next point. And yes, this bit can be placed, if you think it's better, as the first sentence of the next paragraph, in which case your topic sentence comes second. That's fine. The evidence is different, okay? And because the evidence is different, so are the context and the analysis. So the evidence in a research paper is mostly paraphrasing. You're summarizing in your own words, okay? And you can get a lot of evidence out there before you have any analysis to say. The context is which source the information came from, and the analysis is what the evidence is meant to prove. But in a literary essay, evidence is quotations. Ooh, we'll do an infinity sign since I messed up that circle. Okay? Evidence is quotations because we assume in a literary essay that the author's exact words matter. The context is what is happening in the book and who is speaking. Obviously, it's important to know if mother is saying this to father or father is saying this to mother. And some of what's happening in the book at the time is important too. Oh, but probably less than you think. Okay? Just enough to make us know a little bit about when in the book that is. The analysis might be more hefty than it was in your research paper because there's kind of a second step. Often you have to interpret the quotation. What does it symbolize? What does it represent about the relationship between the speaker and the hearer? What does it imply that's not stated? What's the subtext? And then after all that, you have to say what it's meant to prove. So sometimes there is this extra step. Okay, so you may have more analysis than you were used to in your research paper. Now here's a body paragraph from Alex's conclusions. Well, it doesn't like me to click with the pen. Okay. In the research paper, you learn to summarize your thesis and main points and connect to a broader topic. And it's the same in a literary paper, except sometimes your broader topic is just the whole book. Now, Ragtime is a book that lends itself very well to being connected with the real world. And you might want to do that, and you might want to do only that, and that is fine. But one thing to know about literary papers is you always have a built-in broader topic, which is the whole book. So let's say you wrote an entire paper on Tata's journey. Okay? Well, when you got to your conclusion, and you asked yourself, so what, as the video in conclusions asks you to do, which you also are meant to read this week, then one of the ways to phrase that question is, so what does this mean for what the whole book is saying? Okay? And so then in your conclusion, you might bring in how Tata's journey compares to Coalhouse's journey, or Mother's journey, or other parts of the book. You might connect it to the work as a whole and E.L. Doctorow's basic message, if something so simple can be drawn out of it. I think there's lots of messages, but you might connect it to other messages in the book. Your paper should be very focused, and there is enough to say on many parts of it that you can write a whole paper just talking about certain parts of the book, and that is what you should do. But the conclusion is a way you can bring the whole book in. So you can freeze on this frame if you're not. We're not actually going to read all of this because this is getting very long. But she restates her thesis. She summarizes the main points. And she briefly connects to a bigger topic. Like these characters, many people are subconsciously allowing shame to shape their choices. If they can face this hidden motivation, they can embrace who they really are. I expect yours connection to a broader topic to be at least twice this long. Okay? And to hopefully not contain many people, which I know is something we were all taught in high school, like to make our things universal by talking about some people or many people, but you guys are beyond that now. If you want to talk about people, define them specifically. Which people? Okay? So I think there's enough in the video on conclusions. I can leave that as that. All right, tips for literary essays. as I keep saying, do not retell the story. I've read the book. Okay? Organize your paragraphs by idea, not chronological events. So notice how Alex did not talk about what happened at the beginning of the book, the middle of the book, and the end of the book. No. She picked out specific things that proved her point, and that is what you should be doing. If you find yourself writing this happens, then this happens, then this happens, no, that is an absolute no, okay? That is not what a literary paper should look like. It should be ideas building a logical argument to convince someone of your thesis. So let's say you wanted to talk about the objectification of women in ragtime. You might pick out Evelyn Nesbit and her relationship with the media. You might pick out the Eskimos and how father talks about them and their private lives. You might pick out mother and how father sees her. And none of this will have anything to do with the chronological order of what happens first, second, or third. It will be ideas that build up into a point that Dr. O is making. Okay, so that's what you should be doing. You should be choosing the sub-stories, the characters, and the storylines that prove your answer to one of the big questions that are on the topics. The topics are down here in the classwork by discussions, by the way, and also in the assignment. Okay. Another way in which you shouldn't be retelling the story is context. You really only need 1 or 2 sentences at maximum. After mother and father separate, that tells me everything about where their relationship is that I would need for a quote, on what they do after that. When Tata and the little girl are caught in the police brutality that met the Bread and Roses strike, that recalls me to a specific point in the book, and then I will understand what your quotation's about. So picture yourself as talking to someone, like me, who has read the book. You're helping me recall a certain place, not summarizing the whole novel. A few more tips. In-text citations from your main source, Ragtime, should be page number only. You had, hopefully, the author and the title of the work in the first or maybe second sentence of your paper, so we know who you're quoting. Okay? You're not plagiarizing, you're quoting the person who wrote the book that you're writing about. We know it. So all you need to put is the page number. Okay? However, if you're going to cite any other source, you have to do it author year, as always, just like we did in the research paper. So to cite the lyrics, I'm giving it to you right now, that would be Ahrens, 1996, okay, because the lyrics are by Lynn Ahrens, and they were first performed in 1996. You don't have to use any other sources, and I'm not saying that you should. That is not a requirement of this project. However, if you're going to look online for ideas and then use one, you have to cite it. You can't get an idea for SparkNotes and then pretend it's yours. You have to cite it. So if you get ideas online or you use another source, you have to cite it, as we would always cite anything. 2 quick last ones: use a formal tone, advanced vocabulary, though you can worry about that in the second draft. You need to watch the video about correctly introducing quotations, even if you already do dialogue punctuation perfectly, because it's about incorporating them into an essay. So I do think you should watch that one. And thank you very much. You're going to do a great job, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about Ragtime.